Hello and welcome to this week's Sunday Sit-Down, the last one in August 2018. And this is a big one. This is my top 10 favorite games of right now, of August 2018. Of all time as of right now in this moment. So I do this list twice a year. I did the last one in February. I posted it on my personal blog. And I'm going to do this one in video form since I now have this Sunday Sit-Down format. And then I'll post it in writing on my blog tonight. This was a tough one to think through. I'm going to put my little sticky note on the screen here so I can see what I'm looking at. But yeah, this was a tough one. There are some games that dropped off the list that were kind of unexpected and games that edged onto the list that have never been close to it. So definitely some surprises for me. And really the main condition that I used for this list is how excited I am to play these games right now. Like if you came over right now and said, "Hey Jamey, do you want to play this game versus this game?" I kind of looked at the games in that way. Do I want to play this one more than that one? And I think as a result, I'm seeing more shorter games on the list. But there definitely are some longer games on the list that I really enjoy. But I don't know if that's just a change in behavior. I don't know. I'm almost observing this from the outside as I look at this list. I'm like, oh, that's interesting to see that this is how I have changed over time or how I am right now. I also want to mention that I do not games that are not eligible for this list are games that I've designed or published. As much as I love and I'm proud and happy with Viticulture and Euphoria and Scythe and Charterstone and Between Two Cities and My Little Scythe now, all these games, I'm so proud of them and I love them. But I have a different type of favoritism for those games, so I don't want to make them eligible for this list. Also, some of my favorite gaming experiences have been with legacy and campaign games, like Risk Legacy, Near and Far, Pandemic Legacy. I've really, really loved these games. But because of my condition of how excited I would be to play a game right now, they don't really make this list. So someday maybe I'll do a top 10 gaming experiences. The Dice Tower does this, and I think it's a good idea, because sometimes my favorite experiences are different than my favorite ongoing games that I'd want to play on an ongoing basis. There is one kind of exception to that on the list. You'll know it when I get to it. But I think that game is an exception because it continues to create replayability through new modules and new episodes. So yeah, let's get to the list. I'll do quick honorable mentions. Games. So when I wrote down this list, I came up with 15, and then I whittled it down to 10. And the games that didn't quite make the cut were a few surprises. There are a few that have been on the list before, on and off the list. Blokus and Telestrations, two games that I really, really love, but didn't quite make the cut for top 10. Rajas of the Ganges was really, really close. That was a game that I've played. I played for the first time in January, and I own it. I played it quite a bit since. I love this game. Didn't quite make the list, and then two games dropped off the list that have been way, way high on the list in the past, and I'm not really quite sure why. It's just when compared to some of the other games, like the 7, 8, 9, 10 games on this list, they just were a little bit lower. And those games are Isle of Skye and Terra Mystica. And really, this isn't a knock on these games. I've played hundreds of games at this point, so to barely not make the top 10 doesn't really mean anything at all. But it was just interesting to me that they didn't quite make it. So let's get to... I own most of these games, so I'm going to be able to show them to you. I'll also put the names in the description below in case you want to discover these games for yourself. So my number 10 game is... Okay, so yeah, this was actually a bit of a surprise. This game has been way up higher on the list before. Tzolk'in. This is an example of a longer, heavier game that has dropped down a little bit, I think just due to my personal preferences. But I love Tzolk'in, and have for a long time. It may have been number one on my top 10 favorite worker placement games. I'll have to go back and check that. But Tzolk'in is known for the gears. Let's see if I can show you the back of the box. It has these big gears that represent time as a mechanism. So you put down workers on these gears, you try to decide how long you want to leave them on the gears, and the benefits they earn, which you gain when you remove the workers from the gears, get better the longer you leave the workers on there. So there's this wonderful... It's both tactical and strategic in that you're planning ahead, but you're also just looking at, okay, in this moment, I really need this thing, or in this turn or next turn, I really need this thing. What can I do to get it, or what can I do to optimize my turns, because on your turn you have to either place a worker or place workers or retrieve workers. You're doing one or the other, and you have to do one or the other. It also has a bunch of tracks. It has technology upgrades that you can upgrade and get better at during the game. It has things that you build. It has engine building. It has so many different things that I love in a game, all in one box for Tzolk'in. It's a wonderful game. My number 10, it's Tzolk'in. Number 9, okay, this is one of the biggest surprises for me. This game has never been on the list before that I can remember. But this is a game that I've almost dropped completely from my collection at times because it doesn't always get to the table as often as I want. And it does have some things. It was on my list of games that I love despite them having things that I don't like. And this game can be a little bit punishing. It has a ton of different phases in it. But I just love Yedo. And Yedo, I think, is really what kicked Terra Mystica off the list, even though they're completely different games, but they were very, very close to both being on the list or one replacing the other. Yedo is another worker placement game. It also has an auction mechanism to it each round. But it just has one of the most satisfying mechanisms in any game that I've ever played that makes me keep coming back to it, which are the missions. Missions are how you get money or points in this game, and often other little benefits. And pretty much the whole game is accomplishing these missions. They're cards that you get that have a great theme to them, but also great mechanisms where they'll say, hey, you need to gather these things and then go to this place with your workers, or go to these places with your workers and turn in the mission to accomplish it. And I know that maybe sounds like a lot of games with objectives and missions, but there's just something special about the way these missions are executed. Just the different stuff you have to gather is tied so well into the theme, and it's so satisfying to get what you earn when you accomplish a mission. There are different levels of missions. There's green, yellow, red, and black, varying in difficulty. So you could go with these quick and easy missions to get maybe a point or two or get some coins, because it's the main way of getting money, and money drives other factors in the game. A lot of other factors, really. Or you can go for these more complex missions that you might work up to the entire game. The black missions, it might take 8 rounds to gather the stuff for those missions. And so while you're gathering that stuff, you're trying to also pair them with other earlier missions so that you have overlapping things, because you're often not paying anything to use the mission. You're like, it might require you to have a geisha or a certain weapon, and so you might try to get some early weapons, early missions that use weapons that overlap with later missions, so that you're not like getting something and then getting rid of it to replace it with something else. It's just so satisfying. It is. I cannot recommend this game enough, even just to try once as a designer, to see the most satisfying way that you can give players missions in games. It's really, really incredible. So yeah, that's Yedo. That's my number 9. My number 8. Okay, this is one that I don't have. My friend right nearby has it. Dice Forge. Dice Forge was a game that I played for the first time at Geekwave this past year, and almost universally in my group, we just fell in love with it. It's a fast game. It plays in about 45 minutes. It's a game where you're building dice, which is a really cool mechanism. That's a really cool hook. Where you're actually making your dice better throughout the game. But really the thing that makes the game shine for me, there's other engine building too. So you're making your dice better, you're getting some better cards. But the shining aspect is that when it's not your turn, or on every turn of the game, you are rolling your dice and getting stuff. You can't buy stuff when it's not your turn, but you are increasing the resources you have, and sometimes points, sometimes money, based on what you roll on your dice. So there's actually rarely a decision point when it's not your turn. You're just rolling your dice and getting stuff. And then when it becomes your turn, that's when you get to choose, how am I going to use my turn? How am I going to spend these resources? But it's just, it has this constant feel of rewards and engagement. You're constantly being rewarded with new stuff, more stuff, and you're constantly engaged in the game, because every turn you're rolling dice and getting stuff. It doesn't really feel like simultaneous play, because there are depending on the dice faces, there are a few exceptions to this, but usually there are no decisions that you're making when you're actually rolling the dice when it's not your turn, which I think keeps the game moving at a really nice, brisk pace. That's Dice Forge. I'm sorry I don't have it to show you, but it's a wonderful game. That's number 8 on my list. Number 7 is one that I believe made my previous list. I discovered this game, I think in the last year, maybe more recently. And this is Downforce. Downforce is another game that fits kind of into that 45-minute, maybe an hour. It says 45 here, 30 to 45. That seems about right. I've almost only played this with the full player count, so I can't really speak to this game with fewer players, even though it does play 2 to 6. But I love this game as a 6-player game. One, I love that it plays up to 6 players. It's a racing game, and the great, you'll know, like one of the themes you'll notice on my list is that many of these are rewarding games that constantly reward you. But they also offer some interesting interactions. And in Downforce, one of the things that happens when you play a card on your turn, most of the cards have multiple cars on them, multiple car colors. So it might say red 6, yellow 4, green 2. And so when you play this card in ascending order or descending order, you're starting with the highest number. So descending order, you move that car as far as you can. So even when it's not your turn, someone might be moving your cars, and when it is your turn, you might be moving cars that aren't yours. And so there's this rewarding element where you're engaged when it's not your turn, even though, again, like Dice Swords, you're not making a choice when it's your turn, unless you have a special ability that gives you a choice. But you are seeing your car make progress even when it's not your turn. The other aspect of this is that there's a certain strategy in playing these cards at the time that other people's cars can't maximize that movement. So I said yellow 4 was one of those numbers. I might try to use that card at a time that the yellow car is kind of blocked in and can't take that full 4 movement. So you're always trying to maximize these cards for your benefit and minimize the benefit for other players, which is a lot of fun. Downforce, wonderful game. This is my number 7. Oh, and actually, I just played the expansion for this. Some of these games are certainly aided by expansions. Downforce doesn't need an expansion, but I love that they can just come out with new tracks and new abilities on an ongoing basis. And I recently played the kind of the retro 80s loop track, and I think it was my favorite. It was a ton of fun to play, as much as I still enjoy the original tracks. See, that was number 7. Number 6 is an older game that has made my list a few times. This is Scotland Yard. I don't usually like hidden movement games, but Scotland Yard just works for me, and I think it works because so hidden movement is when one player in this game is his location is unknown to the other players, and the other players are cooperatively trying to find where that player is. And the thing that works, I think, so well for Scotland Yard is that instead of stumbling around in the dark for half of the game, on turn 4, I believe, Mr. X reveals where he is. And then every 5 or 6 turns from then on, he reveals where he is. So even though you are in the dark, you constantly have information that you are using to infer his or her next location, or his or her current location. I also love how easy this game is to teach. There are a lot of hidden movement games that have kind of complicated rules about how to play. This game, I can sit down and start playing Scotland Yard with anyone within 3 minutes. No problem. It's super, super streamlined. A really, really elegant game. And even though it's an older game, this is my childhood copy of Scotland Yard. It has held up, and I still love to play this. Also, again, it helps that it plays up to 6 players. I love these games that can play up to larger groups without adding a significant playing time. That's Scotland Yard. That's number 6. Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum. This is a 2-player only game, Hanamikoji. This has the I cut you choose mechanism that I love so much in games. And basically in this game, you're trying to win the favor of, I believe it's 7 different geisha by playing cards in an I cut you choose way, or many of them are an I cut you choose way. You have 4 different actions. You must use all 4 of those actions, and I really like that restriction that you have. That over the course of a 4-turn round, you must use each of those actions once. That's a really neat constraint. But I love the tension in this game. It's so tense. It's so close, and it's one of those games that I'm just always happy to play. I believe it is, I'm looking at the rest of my list. Yeah, this is the only 2-player only game on my list right now. There are others that I really do love, but this is at the top. And this is my number 5 favorite game right now. Getting down to the end of the list here. Okay, so this is actually a new addition to the list too. I wasn't sure if I should put it, but I can't resist playing it. I love playing this game. This is Fantasy Realms. This is my favorite filler game right now, and I've played some great filler games this year, some that I've mentioned recently, but Fantasy Realms is just such a satisfying filler. It's really easy to teach and play, but every game feels so different from these combos that you're building. Like, you're given this random hand of cards, and the whole purpose of the game is, so you start with a hand of 7 cards, and you end the game with 7 cards in hand, and that is how you score. You look at those 7 cards and you score them. So, and you're basically forming combos in this game. There are cards that say, like, this is worth extra points if you have these other cards in hand, or this is worth extra points if you have this specific other card in hand, or this card is worth nothing if you have this other card in hand. And so you're either drawing blind, or you're selecting cards from a face-up row of cards from what cards players have discarded, and you're basically trying to form combos and maximize your points. And it's just fun. I just have a lot of fun with this game. It is a filler, and so that's why I was a little hesitant to add it on this list with these other, like, bigger, more complex games. But I think I need to give credit to how well designed this game is, how fun it is, and how eager I am to play it at any time. It's my go-to filler, and I would gladly play it more than once in a row because it's just so much fun to build those combos and put them together. So yeah, that's Fantasy Realms. That's my number 4. My number 3 game is one that I don't have. This game is sometimes my number 1. It's always been within my top 3 over the last, like, 4 years, and it is Castles of Mad King Ludwig. This is the epitome of a rewarding game. You're constantly rewarded with more and better stuff in this game. You're building this crazy castle with rooms that give you points when you place them, and then they often trigger other rooms and other abilities that give you points. There are endgame bonuses that are worth points based on the buildings that you've selected. So, like, whenever you place a room in this building, you're often feeling 2, 3, 4 rewards, whether they're immediate rewards or long-term rewards, which just feels good. It feels really good. It has this aspect of building something. I like the idea of building something and looking at it at the end of the game and saying, I built that. That's my thing that I built. And it also has I price, you choose, similar to I cut, you choose, where one player each round is choosing the prices of the rooms that are available that round, and all the other players are paying that player to gain those tiles, which is an economic mechanism that I really, really love. I found that with this game, if you play with the wrong people, someone who has extreme AP when selecting the prices for those rooms, it can be a bit of a struggle. But I've learned the people that I can play this game with and just have a lot of fun. And really, for most people who are willing to put aside the AP that can happen in that moment and just eventually just price the things without slowing the game down, it can make for a really, really fun game. I'm always up for playing this game, always. And it helps that it's really easy to teach, and it often plays in a little over an hour. So, yeah, Castles of Mad King Ludwig, wonderful, wonderful game. My number 2. What is my number 2? Oh, yeah, this is a big surprise for me. I don't think this game has been on the list before. Let me look at my list from last year to see if it was on there. No, it wasn't on there. I don't think this game has been on the list. But this is one that I just keep thinking about, and I just want to play it all the time, even though I don't get to play it all the time. And that is A Feast for Odin. This is an Uwe Rosenberg game with a ton of different worker placement action spots, and these really satisfying boards that you're trying to fill in with different shapes. That part isn't particularly thematic, but I don't care because it's so satisfying to put stuff on that board and to fill it in different ways. It's hard to encapsulate exactly what this game is, but really it's just a masterful worker placement game with a ton of different directions to take. And it's just, for me personally, it's just so satisfying to play. It's the type of game where I'm thinking about it before, I'm thinking about it during, I'm thinking about it after. And right now, like, I haven't played this game in about a month, and I'm thinking about it. Like, I wish I could play it today. Maybe actually, I'm getting together with friends today. Maybe we'll play it today. Although we were probably going to play Root or Brass. But I need to get this to the table more often because I absolutely love A Feast for Odin. And it's the biggest mover and shaker on this list. I did not expect it to jump up this high, but it did. Number 2, A Feast for Odin. My number 1 game is the same as it was before. So if you're familiar with this list, you will know, let's see if I can get it out, that my favorite game is Time Stories. Time Stories is different than a lot of these games on this list. I've mentioned a lot of different Euro games today. Almost all these are Euro games. Time Stories is not. Time Stories is a narrative game that uses text and images to let players tell a story. Whenever I play Time Stories, I feel like I am in a movie of someone else's creation, but where I have power, I have agency, I have control in this movie. I have some of the best gaming memories of playing Time Stories, and one of the reasons that it is not just a game that I have good memories about is that it continues to come out with new modules. In fact, we just got the new module, Brotherhood of the Coast, and I can't wait to play it. Like I get as excited about playing a new module in this game as I do about a blockbuster movie, because it's every module to me is so epic and so memorable and so awesome. I really get into it. I really love this game. It's cooperative. I think it's the only cooperative game on my list. Let's see if there's... Scotland Yard is one versus many, but the rest of them... Yeah, this is the only cooperative game. It's not a knock on cooperative games. I enjoy cooperative games, but this is my favorite. This is the best. I even did there's a podcast called the Co-op Cast, and I even jumped on their show for 2 episodes to talk about how much I love this game and what are all the very specific things that I love about this game. I'll link to that in the description below in case you want to go to a deep dive of what I love about Time Stories. That's it. That's my top 10 right now as of August 2018. I'll put these again. I'll put the names of the games in the description so you can look them up if you're interested in any of them. But yeah, that's my list. If you would love to, if you would not love to, if you would care to share your list in the comments below, your current top 10 favorite games, I would love to hear about that. I would love to know what your favorite games are right now, or what you think of the games that I've mentioned today. Thanks for joining me for this Sunday Sit Down, and I will be back next week. Or actually, I'll be back on Tuesday with my favorite game mechanism video. Yeah, that's it. Take care. Bye.